Wow, what a morning we've had so far already. We've had our scholar and our storyteller, and we're done for the day, y'all. No, we actually have a long day ahead.
Please stay.
And we hope that your brains are ready to just keep absorbing and listening, because we've got a lot to cover today. But first, we would like to run you through an exercise. Pull out your phones, scan this QR code. And this interactive exercise is one that we have used in some of our workshops around race, around colorism. And the question is, how much do you feel your skin tone affected your identity growing up? We've got a scale. So we'll give everyone a moment, which is a good moment for me to tell you this URL is the same one throughout the day. So just keep it open and it'll refresh into the right thing automatically if we're on the right slide.
There we go. You can also use the code at the top to log in.
Yeah, but we will be coming back to this same QR code, so it will refresh if we are on top of it. All right, so yeah, we've got a wide range today.
But a lot of I've never thought about it.
Yeah. So the reason we like to do these types of exercises is because it just makes us all realize, oh wow, we're surrounded by folks who have similar experiences to us, maybe have completely opposite experiences to us, right? We've got 24% who are saying, it's shaped every aspect of my life. And we are having 11% saying, oh, I've never thought about it. And that's because of the society we live in today. And we heard some of the stats from Surgeon General, and we will hear some more stats, actually. We'll hear them from us. This is just an example of some of the findings that we like to share with our content creators to remind them that stories really make a difference, right? And the thing is, it's not just that storytelling impacts how you see other people, it also impacts how you see yourself. And so these are some findings around how media can impact young people in particular, impacting their self-esteem. Right, and in this second bullet, the research that this speaks to, after watching TV for a year, only white boys had higher self-esteem. Right, every other group had lower self-esteem. So again, it's just an opportunity, not to be super depressing, but this is the reality of where things have been, and to the point of the conversations already so far, we have lots of opportunity, and there's a lot of room for change.
You can also use a QR code at the bottom to access our tip sheets. We create a lot of tip sheets to help you guys create better stories to lead to better stats in 10 years, hopefully.
And then we also want to thank our advisory council. Where are you at? Advisory council folks, thank you so much. Thank you. And our next panel, we will have this moderated by Dr. Devika Bhushan. And this will be on why authentic and inclusive representation matters. Give it up.
Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? What an amazing morning we've already had so far. Thank you to Yalda and team for having us all here. What we're gonna do to get started is just give you 2 lines of who we are, and then we'll launch into conversation. And I have to say, we could easily spend the full day talking about what this Powerhouse panel is all about and what they do. So we'll try to give you brief snippets of our perspectives. So my name is Dr. Devika Bhushan. I'm a pediatrician and public health practitioner. A couple of years ago, had the honor of serving as acting Surgeon General. I'm really interested in issues of well-being, mental health, resilience, and equity and representation as well.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Eduardo Cisneros. I'm the writer of movies like Half Brothers and Instructions Not Included, co-creator of the show Acapulco, and a Mexican gay man.
Hi, everyone. Dr. John Paul. My pronouns are they, them, tired. And I am a creator, podcast host, the Black Fat Femme podcast on iHeartMedia. I am also a book, so pre-order. I tell everybody, please pre-order. It comes out in March. Black Fat Femme book, Revealing the Power of Authentic Stories in Media. And I am also the director of strategic communication for Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance.
Cool. My name is Brenda Hsueh. I'm a screenwriter, and I've been doing it for, I guess, 15 years or more. And I've started in like half-hour comedy, like How I Met Your Mother, and I've like more recently I've written a movie for Pixar called Elemental, which deals with a lot of like immigrant themes. So yeah, I've really seen a sea change in that way of how representation has come more into the content world.
Awesome. So to start us off, I'd like to ask you each to reflect on a time when you first saw a part of yourself truly represented in some piece of art or the media. And for me, I'll say I was in my mid-30s when Davy, the main character of Never Have I Ever. Thank you, Never Have I Ever. I was thinking about How I Met Your Mother. For some reason, that's all that was in my brain for a second. And honestly, it was revelatory to see a main character with my name, essentially, Devika, Devi, right? And everything that she represented as an Indian American.
I think specifically as a gay Latino, it took a while. I think probably must have been Ugly Betty when I saw first a queer character of Mexican ancestry represent mainstream media. Before that, it was difficult. They're mostly straight men, and I'm very grateful for people like Fernando Valenzuela or people who were trailblazers. But yeah, it was not very frequent.
Yeah, growing up for me, myself, it was actually, I never really saw myself in like a television show. Again, going back to my book, I talk very openly about how folks like Andre Leon Talley was like the first queer big black body that I had saw that literally just felt like they could do anything, right? They literally held so much power whenever they had the mic. And the same thing, Miss J. I have a chapter where I talk about Miss J giving me the confidence to be in my own bad bitchery. That's what the title is of the chapter. You know, becoming a bad bitch. And then the same thing with Miss Lawrence on Real Housewives of is it Atlanta? I think they were on Atlanta. Thank you. Yeah, but those three individuals were like the first time where I really saw queerness and blackness and fatness in a way where it made me feel like I could be my authentic self.
I think growing up, I feel like it might have been Connie Chung. Honestly, like that was maybe the only Asian female that was on TV. And honestly, Asian immigrants are very risk averse. And so I think it's very impactful when they see another person doing it. Like literally that, I think Connie Chung is the reason why there's like an Asian female in every market, like being a newscaster. Like it was like, oh, it's showing that, oh, you can make money at that? That's a real job? Like, okay, well then we'll do it, right. You know? And I think for me, the other turning point was actually for me was seeing Asian names as the writers on things, like in the credits and stuff for the first time, and being like, oh, because I'm not interested in that. I'm like, I can do that. Asian people are writing for these things, and that was very impactful.
So this next question is for Eduardo and Jonathan. So help us understand the kinds of false narratives that you're really looking to disrupt with your work.
Well, my first rule, I would say, when let's say people bring a project to me, I say no cartels, narratives, and no trauma porn, right? I mean, thank you, but because of course these are part of the fabric of society, these are real problems, but first of all, inevitably with these cartel narratives, on top of glorifying violence and crime, there's always that part missing that says this part wouldn't exist if there wasn't high demand in this very rich country to produce this thing where in this other less fortunate country is the only option to make money and to have some kind of upward mobility. So you're telling one part of the story without the other, so it's usually incomplete. And on top of it, in my case, I was born and raised in Mexico, and I grew up, and my perception was shaped by the knowledge that we had not one but two very big civilizations that in the Mayas and the Aztecs that created the concept of the number zero. They taught people how to cultivate corn and things like that, and had observed the stars and could navigate as well. So, and then when you come here as an immigrant, it's almost like that never existed. Like, you know, you're kind of robbed of your culture. So I'm here to empower people to know, like, you have ancestors, you have a lineage of people that came before you, and you should stand in their power and their knowledge and grab confidence from there.
Love that. Thank you.
I love this question because I think part of why I do what I do is because I love disrupting things. Ever since I was a kid, I was a troublemaker. And I've leaned into that now as an adult. I love the idea of disrupting systems that don't support me or don't advocate for me. And so I think when I approach, whether it be, a consulting, right? So looking at different narratives, when I got asked to consult on bottoms, I initially went to that and said, we need to see Black queer characters having some type of joy. Most of the time, in many queer-led, Black-led roles, you see the character being either angry or always having being the person that everyone kind of beats up, right? And I know that the film obviously was, about that, right? They were starting a fight club, but it was fun, right? It was fun. You saw the queer character really being fully developed, and I think that's what the truth to me is, and the work that I do is that there is so many, my work is rooted in intersectionality, and I want folks to understand that there are intersections to the ways that we look at and we move and we thrive in this world. And so I think that's really what's most important for me is that, folks like to depict us as if we don't have multitudes, if we don't have layers. And I think that's the thing that's most important for us to know is that Black queer people exist in multitudes and layers, and we're also fun.
Yeah.
Amen. And for you, Brenda, help us understand really why it is that, what is being left out currently of authentic representation, and what are some of the hidden factors that people may not be aware of around why that happens?
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of representation and authenticity about whether it's POC, gay stories, like, in TV and film in some ways, but I think the truth is when you get to a higher level budget, like when you're like maybe 100 million, when you're really high up, it starts to get scary, I think, for these companies, and I understand they don't want to get blowback if their main character is gay or whatever it is, and that is what we still need to work on, I think, and that is something that I think we are working towards. Like, I remember, because I've always kind of been in the commercial space, like, when I first started pitching shows based on my life, like, I didn't even think I could ever make them Asian. Like, I was like, oh, what? Like, I wanted to do a sitcom about my intense Asian dad that was really repressed and taught me to be a stoic Asian robot. And I was like, oh, but I can't make him Asian because that's never going to sell to, like, these big studios. So I literally was like, what's the white comp of this Asian intense repressed dad? And I'm like, oh, I'll make him like a CIA like dad that, like, raises her to be this like badass like robot CIA agent, but that is literally, I didn't even think how messed up that was, but I automatically made it like palatable and more commercial, and I'm like, this is what can get sold. But thankfully that's not the case anymore. Like, I've really seen that change, and now I can actually like sell stories that are just about Asian people. I'm like, oh yeah, I can just be authentic about this, and that's great. So even in this bigger studio, higher budget space, like, it's changing, it's just not fully there yet.
We use the term in our prep session of Trojan horse, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you have to Trojan horse a concept to get it to a place where it's palatable enough to be mainstream.
And to your point, when the Trojan horse being like, hey, we don't want the audience to ever feel like they're learning a lesson or eating their vegetables. Like, you want to be fun. You want to be, primarily as storytellers, we want to be entertaining, and we also want to say something. And the way to say something is to have people think they're eating candy, but they're eating vegetables.
All right, anybody have a question for this powerhouse panel?
Hi. Thank you so much for being here and for talking to us. I think for a lot of us that are in this space, I think we know the intrinsic value of authentic stories and authentic representation. I think what becomes a challenge is how, or what is the best way, or what can we do beyond, sort of the minimum effort in terms of making sure authentic voices are in the room, making sure authentic people are behind the camera and in front of it. What else can we do? What else should we be thinking about in terms of making sure the stories we tell are authentic, because we know what the value is?
A couple of things, I think, I have a twofold answer. One, it speaks to a little bit of what you're talking about, disruption, right? Because one, I think what you can do is acknowledge that sometimes the biggest disruptions actually happen behind the camera. And it's not only about the fact, it's not about hiring people or filling up those slots. It's changing the dynamics about how you talk about things, creating the language and empowering people to speak about certain subjects, changing the way you speak, changing the way you listen, changing the way how these things are communicating, and encouraging that communication, not only about filling a position, but also making sure that the information is flowing and that it's going to be used productively. The other part is, and it's also something that we discussed in during our prep session, is I've started finding more useful to think about productive ways to approach representation in terms of primarily fighting erasure, right? Because sometimes representation can lead to just tokenization and say like, okay, the United Nations approach. Okay, we have one of each flavor, we're good. And instead of it, you have to say, okay, what is the configuration of this? And we have people in the Latina community expressing as, no stories about us without us. Meaning, okay, you're gonna hire the white male director, but are there people in the room who are gonna guide this perception the way that is shaped? And also, nobody's completely innocent, right? Sometimes we have our own complicity in this subject, in their own bad habits. And to me, it's the bad habit of looking the other way, and which is how erasure begins. And I found this because I see myself in this vantage point being queer and a person of color. And I see the queer community and the way that Dustin was talking about making progress and visibility. And a lot of that is conducive because of the fight of people like Harvey Milk, of course. And Sylvia and the people of Stonewall and all the people that came before us, of course. But a lot of it is also possible because many people who are not queer have queer people in their lives and very close to them, and they have an emotional connection. Then I turn to the brown-skinned Latino immigrant community, and I see that most of us want to look away and not realize that there is a human who's washing the dishes. There's a human who is parking the car. So to me, then I said, well, what about when people go to Cancun? There are people, they're having fun, but there's also serving the drinks. And there's somebody cleaning those rooms, and that became the TV show. Why not tell the stories of these people? Because they're not gonna go and ask how their day is doing. They're not gonna ask if they got kicked out of their house because they were queer and they're living in a Latino conservative family. So why not start facilitating or I'd say making it less easy for people to look the other way? So this is the way we can also do it for identify those bad habits. We say like, it's more comfortable for me not to acknowledge that the person working for me and doing this hard labor is a human person, a human being, because it makes me uncomfortable, right? So once we apply that to all the communities that we have around us, I think it just makes empathy easier. Anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, real quick, you said a lot of great things, but I'll say this specifically, right? I think it's about being intentional. And I think some of us, we sometimes get in, even though we may go, well, privilege and white supremacy and all of it, yes, right, but we still carry privilege. I know for myself, when I sold my show to iHeart and Toyota, how you doing? When I sold my show, I intentionally went back into the room and I said, I want a black producer, I want a black editor, I want a black and queer host. I was telling them the things because I knew that they needed my show, right? And that they wanted to purchase it. And I also was calling the shots on how the show looked and the structure. And so it goes back to what my mom says. If you listen to my show, you know I talk about Edwina all the time. Edwina would always say, closed mouths don't get fed. And I'm a big believer of that. I'm a big believer of saying, I'm gonna tell everybody in this room how to treat me. I'm gonna tell everybody in this room what I want and what I deserve because I've done the work to get here. And I think sometimes as people of color, specifically black folks, specifically black queer folks, we get in rooms and we shrink ourselves because we think we don't deserve to be there. There was a part of me that wanted to shrink myself with sitting on the stage, and I said, nah, girl, you did the work. You better sit on the stage and own that mic. And so that's the piece that if you don't take anything from this session, I really want folks who are marginalized or in any way impacted to know that you deserve to be in every space that you are in and that you deserve to ask for the things that you've done the work to get. That's what I got to say today.
Hi, everyone. Just want to thank y'all for being here and for your insight. you know, as we know, we had 2020, which was the year that people decided to start caring about Black and brown people and people of other historically marginalized backgrounds. And like, you know, in the last 2 years, we've really seen the pendulum from a buyer's perspective really swing back like in the polar opposite direction. So as you all are taking projects out now, or in your interfacing with executives now, what is your response when you get kind of that like, you know, that messaging around like, well, we're really trying to target quote unquote heartland audiences, which we all know what they mean when they say that, or other things about like this story might be too specific, this story might be like this is not gonna fit for kind of right now, or people don't wanna hear about this because they just want to escape.
Listen, I think that is a balance, like, and as a writer, I love writing stories that are specifically about being an Asian immigrant, and I have done that, but I also love writing things that aren't about that, and I don't want to just write about that. Like, I think like there's things that I enjoy both modes, and it's something that I and you guys can speak to that too, of like of and I get the appeal, and also I just love commercial stuff. Like whatever I do, I want it to be commercially appealing to as. But I think you can be very commercially appealing, but also specific, and culturally specific, but still universally relatable. It's kind of like Golden Girls. Like, I don't know, when I was a kid, I loved Golden Girls, even though I was a child, and these were 4 old ladies in Florida. Like, why did I respond so? You know what I mean? Like, it's like you can show a very specific culture and, you know, point of view and still be broadly appealing. And that is what I will say is the goal.
Oh, sorry, just quickly. I think that was when I also like to implement the idea of fighting erasure, because yes, I think to your point, like what you want to do is first create a great story, right? If you have a part of your life that wants to be an activist, that's amazing, and I've done my share of activism, and that has its own goals. In the field of storytelling, the first order of business, create an interesting story, but then you have to say, wait, who are the people who are normally not included in this? Like you can say, oh, I thought about this great Swedish thriller, right? And it takes place in Scandinavia. But there are people there who are normally not represented. And there is a big Middle Eastern community, and there's in native people in the north. Like, so there's also people, maybe people that you could be using that platform to make sure that narratives, communities are not pushed to the side. So that's also, I guess, like a healthy way of doing it. And in that way, when you go to John's point, like when you go into his room, you say, I'm gonna give you a good story. And you like this and you want this because it's good. And then and that's what you need. And then don't try to inject politics that are not at this moment what we're talking about. We're just talking about good story, and the question is, do you want this good story or not, or should I take it to somebody else, right?
Totally.
Thank you all for the time. I know that this is a rich conversation. We'll keep it going during the breaks, the lunch. Come find us, come chat with us. Thank you so much.